And the reality is your money doesn't buy you. Your money buys you somewhere between 25% and let's call it 40% of its value as it used to before the pandemic. That's just a fact. And if we start pushing money printing to the next level, your money's going to be worth half as much as it is in 5 years. It will be worth in 2 decades. It'll be worth 10%. The problem is, you're in turbulence, and you better attach your seatbelts, right? And you better grab something that's solid, because everything that's not solid, the value of it will go to zero pretty faster than you can think.
Renowned entrepreneur and mathematician Fred Krueger has lately offered insightful insights on the harsh reality of our existing financial systems. After carefully reviewing the information, he made a prediction that fiat money would eventually fall while Bitcoin would continue to rise in the years to come. In Krueger's thoughts, unless we switch to more durable assets, Bitcoin being the most brilliant among them, the economy is headed toward disaster. Since currency continues to lose value over time, he sees Bitcoin as a decentralized alternative to existing currencies that is impervious to the whims of governments and central banks. In other words, Krueger is more optimistic than ever, realizing that there is a limited supply of Bitcoin and that its use is growing, both of which he believes will push the price of the cryptocurrency to stratospheric heights. Now, let's hear Fred Krueger explaining why he has such a positive perspective.
I think that this better form of money that was invented by Satoshi, do we think that that's going to dominate? And in my opinion, it's very simple. It's like this inflation stuff is going to it might get better. It might get better over the next, year, maybe 2 years, but it's ultimately going to get much worse. And, Bitcoin is not pricing today's inflation or tomorrow's inflation. It's pricing long-term inflation. The problem is, even if inflation is good for the next 2 years, it's very unlikely that it's going to be good for the next decade. And the reality is your money doesn't buy you. Your money buys you somewhere between 25% and let's call it 40% of its value as it used to before the pandemic. That's just a fact. And if we start pushing money printing to the next level, your money's going to be worth half as much as it is in 5 years. It will be worth in 2 decades. It'll be worth 10%. The problem is, you're in turbulence, and you better attach your seatbelts, right? And you better grab something that's solid, because everything that's not solid, the value of it will go to zero pretty faster than you can think, right? And if you're dealing with government paper that's paying you 5%, 6% interest, it just doesn't matter to me what these people say about liquidity, about these contraptions like BTFD and stuff. They just don't matter, because ultimately the government is absolutely going to debase your currency, and you can hold anything you want, but you cannot hold government currency. It just will not work right now. It's not a valid way to hold your money. Now you could debate whether stocks is an okay way. I actually don't think it's gonna. I think it's a very substandard way of holding your money right now. I don't see anything that has anywhere near the long-term track record of Bitcoin right now. I just think people are ignoring the magnitude of what the tsunami that is about to hit in the next 5 to 10 years. And I don't want to sound like Peter Schiff or an alarmist, but I actually think I think this is going to get far worse than anybody thinks. We're screwed. Inflation, as Sin says, it's a mathematical certainty. So I think we got to look at, what does that mean? That means we have to be in Bitcoin, right? We have to be in Bitcoin. If you want to be in gold, fine, be in gold. Probably not as a good place to be as Bitcoin. We know that the power law that we all track and love for Bitcoin, it also applies for Bitcoin versus gold, right? So Bitcoin's eating gold's lunch. And so, if you want to have some in gold, that's okay. You probably are going to do okay relative to purchasing power of everything else. So it's not the worst, but probably going to underperform Bitcoin. Will we have pullbacks? Yeah, we're going to have some pretty nasty pullbacks. We're definitely not seeing the end of kind of these pullbacks. I personally think we're going to go higher before we pull back the next. I think we're kind of at the level for now of this particular pullback, but do I know for sure? No, I don't know. Do I care? Not really, because I just don't see any alternative right now other than to be close to fully invested, whatever that means for you in Bitcoin. I think you got to be pretty close to fully invested here.
A recent argument regarding why Bitcoin's price hasn't increased, despite possible changes in Federal Reserve interest rate policy, was facilitated by Roundtable host Rob Nelson. According to John Devine, head of OTC trading at Blockville, the strength of fiat currencies, particularly the US dollar, has a direct bearing on how quickly Bitcoin is growing. He clarifies that Bitcoin has a more difficult ascent during periods of strength in fiat currencies, such as the dollar. According to Devine, Bitcoin may reach all-time highs if the Federal Reserve implies interest rate reductions. Devine also draws attention to the Federal Reserve's careful balancing effort in the convoluted modern economic environment. He asserts that the impending election and the urgent need to contain inflation are the two main variables influencing the Fed's actions. How do you feel about this development? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's go back to Fred Krueger and his additional thoughts into Bitcoin.
Do I think that we could be down 20% in a month? Very easily. It's very possible, right? But you can't optimize for that, and you can't try to trade around that. You can't be too cute. None of that stuff's going to work. The only thing you can do is hodl. And so, that's not kind of what these crypto people want to hear, because they kind of all want to hear, how they're going to revolutionize this or that, or, how to tie into banking or something. But it's really not. It's not about tying into banking or tokenization of real world assets. It really isn't about that. It's really about finding a real alternative to this fiat mess that we're in, which is going to be really scary. It's just, you can't underestimate how serious and scary this stuff is. And, I think if you were scared out of your mind with COVID, be prepared to be even more scared out of your mind in the next couple of years, because I just feel like the wheels have come off this engine. The wheels are coming off. Hold on to Bitcoin for dear life, because that might be all you have. You might lose everything else. You might lose your house. You might lose your job. You might have nothing else other than your Bitcoin, right? That's kind of where I think you have to kind of have that mindset. And as much as people think we're back to business as normal, we're not business as normal. Bidenomics has not worked. We're definitely in a sort of a false economy, false narrative of everything's great, right? I know you're going to hear a lot of that on TV. The economy's great, everything's great, but it's only great because we're pushing the gas pedal at full speed, and we're pushing the gas pedal right in the middle of a major recovery. And so, we're headed for the wall. I don't know whether the wall is going to be a crash, or is it just going to be things go up. I think things go up in terms of prices. That's kind of my expectation. I think they're gonna talk about this stuff. They're going to explain it away. They're going to come up with some other stats saying that it's not a problem. But I think it's at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, really, who do you believe? Do you believe in the code that tells you 21 million? Or do you believe what this nonsense that these politicians are telling you?
In addition to exposing the fragility of the present financial system, Fred Krueger highlights the critical role that Bitcoin may play as a stable asset. He cautions that the wisest course of action is to hang on to Bitcoin despite probable temporary declines in its value. As far as Krueger is concerned, Bitcoin is a hedge against the next economic storm that may cause you to lose everything else, including your home and your possessions. In light of the collapsing monetary system, this highlights the significance significance of Bitcoin as a dependable alternative and gets viewers ready for the difficulties that lie ahead. The pessimistic view of Krueger serves as a lesson to assess economic data with caution. He encourages us to make a decision on whether to believe in the unchangeable code that guarantees Bitcoin's restricted supply or the constantly shifting declarations made by financial and political leaders. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts below.